Heyo folks, this is Ham the Guinness Gamer here again, bringing you my Ashes of Creation development update summary for the August 2023 nodes update. Now what this is I'm trying to condense down the 2-hour 20-minute live stream down into as short as possible while retaining all the important bits of information that were contained within that live stream. Now before I get into that, if you like this video, give me any likes, subscribes, comments you feel like dishing out down below, but for now let's get straight into it. So, the first thing that was discussed in depth was citizenship. Now, to be a citizen of a node, you need to own a property. We've discussed properties briefly before, but there's 4 different types. We have inns and apartments, static in node housing, and freeholds. Now, inns will be the most accessible type of property, and most people will actually have access to this. It's a room in a building that's rented by one person, and it's actually available in the starting areas. There is some availability of storage and furniture slots in inns, and as I say, it's the most accessible by a mile out of the 4 different property types. Inns are soft capped by citizen taxes, in that your citizen taxes increase the more citizens there are in a node, and therefore it starts to become fairly difficult for different citizens to buy access to an inn, because it'll just become so outrageously expensive in certain nodes. But technically that's where the whole population could have their property if they wanted, and that's how they get their citizenship. Out of the next 3 different types of properties that there are, the most available will be apartments, aside from inns. Apartments will be in every node, and they can be extended by the mayor, and they're also rented by one person, similar to the inn, so you don't share these with anybody. And there's different types of apartments, such as penthouses, and depending on what type of apartment you go for, there are different furniture thresholds and storage capacities of the different apartments. The third property then is in node housing. We don't know much about that other than it'll just be static and in node. And then the 4th is freeholds, which we've discussed in detail with I think it was the June 23 development update. It was about freeholds, and they've done an extensive summary about that. Essentially, freeholds, very few people will get them, and they'll be very exclusive. They'll be the most exclusive of the 4 different types of houses. But essentially, you need one of those 4 different types of housing to be a citizen. And everyone is expected to actually be a citizen somewhere, so the majority of people will be covered by inns, but everybody will have access to at least one type of housing. Now, when you're a citizen in a node, citizens have to pay taxes, but the taxes, these are regular payments that have to be made, but they will confer a lot of benefits to the players. You'll get reduced fees and reduced tax rates for different services in the node. You'll also get exclusive access then to node vendors and relics that anybody who isn't a citizen in that node won't get. Now, I say about reduced tax rates there, there's 4 different types of taxation that will be in use in nodes. The 4 types are amenities tax, commerce tax, property tax, and artisanship tax. Now, commerce tax was mentioned in this development stream and shown. It's just essentially a flat percentage added to the base cost of buying and selling items, which is straightforward. Property tax, again, we have discussed before, but it's just tax for owning the property in the node, and that'll be a regular payment as well. Now, amenities tax and artisanship tax, we haven't got that much information about it, but presumably amenities tax will just be like a flat percentage added for using things in the node, like the caravansary and the warehouse. I imagine there'll be a cost to those. And then the artisanship tax similarly will presumably be a flat percentage then added to using the different artisanship buildings in a node. Now, if you want to leave a node, you can leave the citizen. You can renounce your citizenship of the node at the town hall, but there will be a cooldown before you can join another node. However, if your node is destroyed, there's no cooldown. You actually get what's called a refugee status, and refugee status then has the potential to have reduced taxes and other benefits when you move to another node. But again, this is we'll get into this a wee bit later on, but that'll be dictated to by the mayor in those new nodes, whether he's actively trying to encourage refugees to come to his node. But you can get then advantages. There's been no mention of how long refugee status would last, but I presume it's until just until you get yourself a new node. No one can revoke your citizenship, only you. Nobody has that power to remove that. I presume if you don't pay your taxes on your build on your property in the node and then you get that removed from you, I imagine that will also remove your citizenship, but that hasn't been confirmed. Stephen just said no one else will be able to remove your citizenship, not the mayor or anything like that. The second thing then that was discussed in depth in the development update was mayorship. Now, depending on the node type, there's 4 different election types for mayorship. If the node type's a military node, it's the most interesting and the thing that was actually most information was shared about in this live stream. There's actually a trial by combat for the military. Now it's not a 1v1, so it's more like a free-for-all where players that want a particular candidate can fight alongside that candidate in instant based modes like timed events, and then there'll be objectives in those for the candidate as well. So that actually sounds awesome. Ultimately you would think the candidate with the most, not strictly going to be the case, but the candidate with the most people backing them is likely to win, particularly if they're PvPers. But obviously if you have a smaller group that are really, really hardcore, better fighters and maybe better organised, you'll still be able to win. That's very, very interesting way of being elected for a mayor, but that's only in the military node. In the scientific node, it will be a ranked choice popular vote, which seems straightforward enough. In the economic node, it will be a blind bid auction. I would say the biggest merchant of the server is likely to win that one if they're willing to part with their money. And then the 4th node type then, and how the mayor is elected, is the divine node type, and that'll be a PvE favour competition, so imagine it'll be objective based again, but we'll get more information on that in the future. Now, mayors, the idea behind mayors is that they're supposed to improve the quality of a node. They're not for progressing it to make it bigger, and you have to be a citizen before you can actually be a mayor, before you can apply to be a mayor. Inactive or griefing mayors will be able to do damage, but it's limited in some ways, but I'll get into that later on. Some mayor options have automatic timeouts and some don't. The election cycle then will be the main way that you actually get rid of mayors, but as I say, I'll discuss that further throughout this video. Now, different nodes have different mayor options based on the race, the location, the node type, and other options are universal. And again, we're going to get into those different options that the mayor has, the different powers they have in this video. Mayors will have the option to engage the node community with message of the day as well, and a direct chat channel, but again, that'll be up to, there'll be no forced usage of that. That'll be up to individual mayors whether they actually use that. And then there's several smaller, I suppose, benefits that mayors get that you can see here on the screen. They'll get a mayor title, they'll get unique mounts, armor, cosmetics and event abilities. So it's definitely going to be a large enough part of the game that a lot of players, I suppose, won't get to experience, but hopefully they'll be able to experience vicariously if they're friendly or with a mayor, or they get a mayor voted in that's part of their guild or something. Hopefully all of us will get some kind of knowledge or internal workings of that, because it seems like it's going to be quite a large section of the game, and we'll see how that works, you know, for how many players actually get to experience it at some point. I imagine it'll take a hell of a lot of time. That's one thing that's clear. For if you want to be a good mayor, if you want to be a bad mayor, you can do whatever you want, but if you want to be a good mayor, I'd say there's a decent bit of effort, and there'd be a requirement to be logged in at least once a day, but probably more often to do the various things that need done. The third thing that was discussed then was mandates, and what mandates are is essentially it's an energy system for the mayor to actually achieve things within the node. Now, you acquire mandates by citizen engagement in your mayor choices. Popular choices essentially equals a higher level of citizen engagement, and then that'll give you more mandates for future choices. Certain types of mandates are linked to certain types of actions. There's no hard cap on mandates. There are only so many options that the mayor can use to actually generate mandates, so that's a way of sort of limiting it in a way. The actions for generating mandates also have cooldowns, and mandates are linked directly to the mayor, so they don't carry over to a new mayor if you get voted out in the election cycle. Now, it says here on the screen here, there's just gives you a list of activities that'll generate mandates: policy votes, construction contribution, mayoral commission, mayoral caravan, node war, and node siege. All these things obviously very, very relevant to the mayor and the node. And if you're pushing in the right direction for a lot of these things, like policy votes, we'll get into policy shortly. But if you're choosing policies that the most citizens are engaged with, then you'll get more mandates, because they'll be able to the citizens are able to show their support through usage and just basic engagement with all of these different things, and then you'll get more mandates, and then you're able to do better for the node, more for the node, and that'll have a rolling effect, I suppose, and you'll keep being able to do more and more as you do the right things and get more mandates that citizens are happy with. The mayoral actions cost mandates, obviously, as I said there, to do them all, all sorts of different actions, and some cost a wee bit more, but the actions that you can do is choosing the taxes. You can actually bypass policy votes, which again we'll get to policy shortly, but that's like a veto, a mayor veto for different rules that are being set in the node. You can initiate constructions, you build expansions, and then there's mayoral commissions as well, and all of these cost mandates. So mandates is very important, and keeping citizens happy is going to be very important, because then you get more mandates and then you're able to do more things for the town or for the node, and therefore it will grow quicker and it'll become a better node for it. I mentioned there briefly mayoral commissions. Now, mayoral commissions are quests issued, essentially they're quests issued by the mayor to help the node in some way. Players partake in these. Players get rewarded in XP, node reputation, and node currency for reputation. For node currency for participation. Nodes then also get rewarded, and they get rewarded based on the amount of player participation. And the nodes rewards will be commodities, node-to-node reputation, mandates, and temporary buffs to buildings or zones. So generally, it's something that you want to be doing. Players want to be doing. The node wants all the players to be doing as well. They can be done by citizens and non-citizens. They cost gold to launch, and there's a limited number of active commission slots at one time. Commissions will also be proportionate to the node size, so the amount of people you need to engage in them will increase depending on obviously how many citizens there actually are in the node. They can also be linked. The commissions can be linked to the node type, the race, and the location, but all of them obviously won't be. There'll be some universal ones as well. Commissions are limited on time, but not limited on players. So that makes sense. Again, you want to get as many people as possible engaging in the commissions within the limited time frame that they're set, and then obviously that'll increase the nodes rewards out of it. And commissions generate mandates for the mayor, so again, increased player participation means more mandates, means future power for the mayor to do the right things and to improve the node. And then also then says here at the bottom on the screen, the node will gain access to new commissions based on the node type, location, and building choices. Now, the next thing that was mentioned, and I've already briefly mentioned them myself, was policies. Now, policies are mayor actions for the node, and citizens can vote on the policies. Essentially, majority vote passes. The mayor can bypass a vote if he doesn't agree with it by spending mandates, but that is of limited use. Different policies become available depending on node situations, such as racial policies become available, building policies, happiness policies, military policies. They all become available depending on the situation of the node. For example, for the military policies, if a siege is on the horizon or you're at war with somebody, or the racial policies, will depend probably on the dominant race or a minority race that's in the node. There is a limited number of slots for policies, and some policies will have cooldowns, but not all. Now, some policies can affect the whole zone of influence of the node, or they can affect vassal nodes of or they can affect node buildings. They're generally wide-ranging, and they can affect a whole lot of things. Other policies will just be limited then to the node proper that you're in. Policies can also be directed towards refugees. So this is what I briefly touched on earlier, that if the mayor wants to actively encourage people with refugee status because their node has been destroyed to come to your node, then you can probably give them reduced taxes and various policies that'll encourage them to come to your node and therefore increase your population. You can kind of take advantage of a situation that's happened elsewhere where a node has been destroyed. Some policies also have a visual effect, like boxes of food or clothes sitting around when you're in, when you have a policy that's taking in refugees, and that'll be pretty nice because the artwork so far, I'll show it towards the end of this video, some of the running footage of the artwork, but it's really, really good looking. Like the nodes look fantastic. The other thing is then policies, point 1 here on the screen, policies can alter a variety of ways that the node functions. So it can change taxes and fees, the buildings and zone buffs, and node to node reputation activities, either military for war or trade for economic. Also policies then are unlocked based on a variety of conditions. Unlocked conditions include the node level, the node type, and again, as I say, the dominant node race, the buildings, the location, the events, the happiness level of the node. So there is a lot. There's quite a vast amount of policies will be in the game, but not all of them will be available at any one time. In fact, not even close to it by the sound of things. But the mayor will have a lot of leeway with what they're choosing and what direction they want to push the node, which would be fantastic. But of course, then also the citizens have to be on board with the policies that the mayor's choosing because they have the vote to pass them. And if you're a mayor, you do not want to be spending all of your mandates vetoing citizen votes to try and push your mandates through or push your policies through, because if you're doing that, then you're probably not going to last come the next election cycle. You're doing something that your citizens don't like. Now, the next thing that was discussed was service buildings, and there's a decent amount of content in this part. There are two types of service buildings. First of all, there's default buildings that come in every node. These include the town hall, the caravansary. Caravansary is for where you keep your caravans, where you upgrade your caravans and you reserve caravan stalls to keep your caravans there. Then, the warehouse is default building as well. That's just for storage. And then the apartments, which I've discussed before, the property type, they are also default buildings, and they come in every single node. These can all be upgraded and specialized themselves by the mayor, but they're in the node no matter what. Then the second type of service building is a constructed building, and these are artisanship buildings and businesses and such, and these are initiated by the mayor and they're placed on a plot, and they're voted on by the players and then built by players, and so that's how you start to make your node fairly unique, is by building a certain type of constructed building, I suppose. If you want to push into one particular niche for your node to be the best weaponsmith node or something, you're going to build a couple of different smithies to push towards that, or you might be more generic. But that's how you make your node unique anyway, by those constructed buildings. Of the constructed buildings then, there are two types. There are active buildings, and these include the artisanship buildings and the businesses, and then there are also passive constructed buildings, and these provide passive benefits to the node, and they never need to be visited by the players like you would visit the artisanship buildings, actually use them. The passive buildings will just be there providing a passive buff. One such benefit that they provide is providing expansion capabilities to the active buildings. So you're going to need a good amount of these passive buildings in your node to actually improve your active buildings and improve the node overall. Now, as we've seen in the freeholds update, buildings have tech trees for specialization that are very exclusionary, i.e. the higher level you go, the more choices you're going to have to make in that tech tree, which will also rule out other choices. If you want, you can build multiple of the same building to try and gain access to the whole tree, but again, that's going to be using up more plots, and you have to make a conscientious decision to actually do that, and weigh up the pros and cons of what you'll actually be losing out on and what other buildings you'll not be able to build because you're choosing to do that. Now, passive buildings, as I say there, can help support the higher level buildings, but essentially what this means is the mayor will have a lot of decisions. You know, he will dictate where the node is going and what kind of niche you want to go into. But of course, if you pick a certain type of niche that other nodes are going for, it can lead to conflict and end up to your whole node engaging in the PvP system based on the decisions that the mayor's made. Again, as I say, the mayor makes the decision, but there is a certain amount of buy-in for the community, and they will have power. They will have a vote on the buildings. And last thing then here, before moving on to the next service building slide, is building plots are predefined in their location, but they're universal for what you want to place there. So again, that'll give a decent amount of uniqueness to each individual node, and it'll be the mayor that chooses the slot for where to place something. Now, building placement will matter more than just layout. The building locations can be objectives in your wars and your events and sieges, and they can be destroyed even if the node isn't destroyed. So this opens a tactical level for sieges where nodes can be weakened without actually being fully destroyed, but it also means then that the mayor has to think of where he's placed. Now imagine a fairly standard target, I suppose, for a siege might be the barracks, if he's going to place a barracks, and that's where the garrison comes from. If somebody wants to attack a node and destroy that barracks, it'd be best if the mayor's placed the barracks right in the centre of the town as opposed to beside a gate or something, because if that's going to be an objective, then you want to keep the enemy as far away from it as possible, which of course makes sense. Now, all constructed service buildings are available to all nodes, but more unique buildings are available, like the node type building, and certain relics give access to certain types of workshops as well. So essentially the majority of service buildings will be available to all nodes, but there will be certain unique elements that unique buildings that certain nodes have access to. Now, as you see here on the screen, service buildings have regular maintenance costs, and this will come out of the node treasury. Destroyed buildings stay destroyed for a time, and then the plot becomes available for building again. So again, if the building's destroyed in a PvP event, the plot eventually becomes reusable. However, if it's just damaged, not fully destroyed, they can be repaired. The buildings can be repaired by players dropping off materials to them in a similar way that the building will actually be built in the first place. Now, mayors can demolish buildings for a mandate cost, but of course players have to agree with that vote to destroy something. Imagine that's something you really would not want to do. You need to have a really good reason for it, because there's a lot of effort, a lot of citizen effort, mayor effort, a lot of cost to building each individual building there. So if you're going to be destroying one, I'd say you're gonna struggle to get citizens to go along with that if it's being used at all. Now, some building benefits can be received in vassal nodes if the building is in the parent node. Empty building plots can actually be physically seen in the world, and also there'll be access to a node map that will show all of those as well. The building time frame is dictated to by the type of building, and can be augmented, can be quickened up by policies or effects. But essentially the higher level building that you're building obviously will take longer, and generally the time frame you're talking about building something is between 15 minutes and 2 days. So some of the higher level ones will take quite a while to get up and going. Now, the buildings cost gold for the mayor to place, but then the players contribute resources, the citizens contribute resources to actually build the building. Now, this part of the process is not actually rewarded with currency, so the players have to really want that building to be built to engage. So you're not rewarded with anything, you're just putting in your materials, but you're doing it for the best, the betterment of the node that you're in, and because you're an active tax-paying citizen, you want to help the node progress, and that's why you'll do it. Now, you can also watch the buildings being built in real time, which is pretty awesome, and as I say, it can take anywhere between 15 minutes and 2 days. So you're not going to sit there and watch the whole thing, but I think that's pretty awesome if you be out questing or out harvesting resources and you're coming back to the node every couple of hours or whatever, and you're seeing the node, the new building actually progress and the different bits of scaffolding and things being built up. I think that's pretty awesome, and you actually see it. I'll show it later on in the video. You see it in the live stream, the building actually being built in Quicken. You know, it's really quickened up, but it looks awesome. Now, another thing that was discussed in great detail was buy orders. And what buy orders are the primary way for a node to get commodities, and they're instrumental for node activities. So node activities such as building, construction, upgrades, maintenance, that kind of thing. Now, commodities are the resources needed by nodes to complete actions. So siege, defense, buildings and maintenance, trading with other nodes. Commodities don't actually exist in player inventories. Such as, you know, it shows on the live stream that a commodity that the node needs is bins of stone, and the buy order goes out. We'll discuss buy orders in a second, but it goes out for these bins of stone, and what the players are able to contribute to that is just like raw stone or normal stone. But what they need to do is contribute, like, you know, 1,000, and then that becomes one bin of stone. So the quantities we're talking are quite large. It's going to be very difficult for one player, for example, you know, to fulfill everything that the node needs. But the actual bins of stone will never be in players' inventories. Those are only for the node. Now, what the buy order is, it's essentially a recipe that the mayor has initiated. As I say, players have to contribute materials to it as a package, and then the materials that the buy order can be raw materials or processed goods. They're never going to be the final items, you know, but they're processed goods and raw materials. Players then get, if they fulfill some of this buy order, then they earn node currency in return. Now, node currency is for use in nodes for various unique vendors and such, but node currency stays with the player, and even if the node is destroyed, or if you drop citizenship, you bring the node currency with you. So the node currency is universal across different nodes. So that's useful, you know. You can build up node currency in one city or one node, and if it's destroyed or you leave it for whatever reason, you can then bring that with you. It's not all wasted. Now, however, there is also a mechanic called node reputation, and you earn that in the node where you're doing, you know, the buy orders and the different missions and such. Whereas if you go to a new node, you'll not have any of that node rep, so some of the vendors and stuff will still be locked out to you even if you have the currency, because you don't have the node reputation. But still, you know, I like that mechanic, the way the two of them tie in with each other. You get node reputation then from social organizations and religions and such, but I'm sure we'll get more information about that in the future. Now, buy orders are one of the things that they'll happen automatically even if the mayor isn't actively choosing them. So if you've got a griefing or an inactive mayor, buy orders will still come online in the node, and you'll still have that opportunity then to get your node currency and help the node. However, if the mayor isn't choosing them, then I imagine the automatic system may not be choosing the best ones for the node. It might just be choosing random ones, but we'll see how that works. Ultimately, you want a good mayor no matter what. Like, you want a node that is somebody you trust, or somebody who wants to actively improve the node, or it'll be pretty shit, to be honest, if you end up working hard in a node where the mayor is toxic or inactive. It would be it would make you definitely consider renouncing your citizenship, let's just put it that way. Now, the mayor can vary the reward to players then for the buy orders, and the reward comes from the node treasury. The mayor can also choose the duration and quantity of the buy order required, and if the duration is too low for the buy order, this is interesting actually, the players therefore can't complete it because the mayor hasn't given them enough time, the full amount is still paid out from the treasury. So you could end up have mayors that are really inefficient with their buy orders, and they're trying to get them done too quick, and they're not actually being completed, but they're still sending that money out of the treasury, and then therefore they're wasting taxpayers' money, but they're wasting the treasury money, and that ultimately will have a knock-on effect to the progression of the node. Now, buy orders then will be used by players who want to trade their way across Vera, and it will tie in with a caravan system, so you're able to actually see, each player will be able to see what buy orders are available in what nodes, and then if you are building your trading empire and you're using the caravan system and maybe the merchants, the trade ships and things like that, you're going to be constantly looking at all the buy orders that are out for each node, and then you're going to do the maths and work out, can you get all the goods or a significant portion of the goods that they're asking for, and can you get them there in time before the duration runs out. So that will be a very enjoyable way to play the game. I think if you wanted to be to build your merchant empire, then you can, but obviously the caravan system is going to be discussed in depth in a later system, or in a later live stream. But it's essentially a system that involves a lot of PvP, and you might then have to hire players that will actually defend your caravans, because once you are choosing a buy order from one node and you're maybe bringing it from another node, you have to move the caravan from A to B, and that's open for PvP the whole time then. So that'll be a great way to play the game, and I can't wait to see that in more detail in the future with the caravan system. Now, other players that maybe don't want to go into that level of depth for trading and such, they can just use buy orders then as maybe a slightly better vendor to sell their materials to that they don't need, because you'll also get your node currency as well as maybe a bit of gold for the items that you would just get gold for elsewhere. Now, how do you complete a buy order? You just have to go out and acquire the items. You look at the buy order through the user interface and you'll see what's needed, and you just go out and get those items, and you just come back to the node and you turn them into an NPC. At the minute, the NPC is called a requisition agent, and he'll just be standing at the warehouse, and you'll turn them in there and you'll get rewarded on the spot. Now, not all commodities will be available to be buy ordered, and not all commodities are local to a node. Not all are available in a node, and that then will tie in with, you can trade, I'll discuss this slightly further on, but you can trade with other nodes then to get certain commodities that aren't actually available to you in your zone of influence or the area that you're in. So that brings me lovely straight into the next section then, which is trading between nodes. A mayor can send out a mayor request to other nodes for certain commodities, and the mayor of another node then offers a fulfillment trade in reply to that. So the original mayor can then accept or reject that offer. If it's accepted, a caravan is then spawned and players can attack and defend it, as mentioned earlier. The caravans, as I say, caravans will be discussed in depth in a future live stream. But essentially then, for this trade, the nodes can only trade with each other if they have a trade agreement in place. There are a limited amount of a trade agreement relationship in place. There are a limited amount of trade relationships that nodes can have, and this node relationship with each other then can improve over time up to alliance level. And then, as mentioned earlier, nodes can actually trade commodities to other nodes that aren't present in that node. So it'll actually become very useful to acquire the commodities that aren't in your local area. Now, something that was mentioned quite a lot throughout the live stream was the power that mayors will have and the player buy-in to the decisions that the players are making. And I'm sure there'll be concern out there in the community about the amount of power mayors will actually have, especially if they want to grief or if they go inactive. Now, one such example would be that the power that mayors will have is that they can actually abuse probably the buy order system with insider trading, because they can decide what buy order they're doing before they actually select it and make it visible to the public, and then they could tell their friends or their guildmates or their family members about what they're going to do, and then those different players then can go away and harvest the materials that are needed, and then once the mayor puts the buy order up, they'll have a lot of what they need to trade in and get the rewards for that. Now, that's something the mayor will be able to do. The devs and Stephen confirmed that, but it's something then that players, it'll be pretty obvious pretty soon to the other players in the node if that's what's actually happening, because you'll wonder how buy orders are being fulfilled, a half hour after they've went up or something, and things like that. That then will help dictate where your vote goes when it comes to re-election, and mayors like that won't last through the election cycle, and that's one of the main ways that players have the power over the mayor, is to vote them out come the election cycle. They also, of course, ultimately can leave the node citizenship if you're that unhappy. But in game there will be different mechanics to actually limit the amount of damage that a mayor can do, and that's something that's under constant iteration by the devs. You know, for example, like buy orders are, I mentioned earlier, buy orders will be auto chose if the mayor doesn't choose them, so that's something that won't be missed out on. Now, I imagine buy orders may not be, as I said earlier, they may not be the best ones that are selected by the AI, so the node will still be missing out, but at least they're being selected rather than a mayor just not selecting them at all. But players can also withdraw their support for the mayor by not fulfilling the buy orders at all, as these generate a lot of mandates, refusing to complete other activities that generate mandates, refusing to contribute materials to building, so they'll not actually get built if a lot of the players are on board with actively not building the buildings. Now, ultimately this is always going to slow down the node growth, but it will maybe get the mayor out for the next election, and then the node can start to grow, but that'll still have a long-term effect, because if you have another node near you that maybe you're likely to end up at war with or PvP with, if your mayor slows you down for a whole election cycle, then it'll mean that ultimately you might be behind that other node and be at a disadvantage when it comes to actually being at war with them. So it's definitely something people should be very aware of, that it's really important who you vote in for mayor, and that you trust them to do a good job, and that they have the node's best interests at heart with the actions that they're going to do. And also the last thing to note then about the election cycle: the election is based purely on player opinion. Current mayors receive no systemic advantage when it comes to re-election, so it's all just an even playing field. The last section here then is what I like to call the nuggets of information, basically the miscellaneous information that was dropped into the stream that is difficult to actually categorize into any of the other categories. The first thing then was potions. Potions will have cooldowns for consumptions. Potions, meals and drinks will actually have different tiers, and it's the tiers then that will share cooldowns. And all three of these things, potions, meals and drinks, are intended to all be a tactical element to combat. Another thing then is mounts in combat. You're not necessarily going to be able to tell what abilities a mount has due to skins and such that they can have on them. The intention is that you learn the abilities by fighting the mount, and then you bring that information with you forward into your playing of the game. Combat in general is still going to be a hybrid approach of tab targeting and action combat, as previously discussed. You can't assign enemy of the state to a player. There'll be more about enemy of the state in the future, but you can't assign it to a player, or the mayor can't assign it to a player. NPCs, the only NPCs that can be customized by players are mercenaries and guards. They can be upgraded in the barracks, but you can't customize how they look, etc. Guards defend nodes against events and sieges. They can be killed, but they're very strong units and therefore they're difficult to kill. The garrison is also present in sieges. Garrisons can be upgraded, presumably via the barracks building. Non-combat NPCs are mostly despawned for sieges, other than those needed for objectives. In general, the node intention is that they will regularly be destroyed by PvP and events to contribute to the ever-changing world. Now, this is something probably doesn't seem appealing to players on the face of it, because you think you could put a whole lot of effort into a node, maybe the mayor of the node, or you've been a citizen there for a long time, and then a bigger node comes along, or a better organized node comes along and destroys it, and you feel like you lose everything. In the short term that would be annoying, but if you think of the long term, the longevity of the game, if you were sitting at a max level node that you'd been in for 6 months and you had all the gear and all the best buildings and such in that node, the game would eventually be becoming stale. So the game constantly changing and the PvP system and things being destroyed, for me, will add to the longevity of it. It means that you can be playing it for years, and you know, it can add to the story of the server and such, where you can talk to people, you know, 6 months through the server or a year through the server, and you can say, well, oh, remember this node that was there and we reached, you know, village level and it was great, and we did this and we did that in the first 2 months of the server, and then somebody came along and destroyed it. You know, we were building a great village there and now it's farmland, or you know, but yet that was destroyed and we went on to another one and we became bigger and better for it. That's the kind of story that servers will have. So I think that's great, because it'll mean things don't get stale and you don't get sick of the game, and it potentially then is a game that you will play for years, and it'll be constantly changing, and therefore will never get boring and will always stay fresh. At least that's obviously, to me, that's the intention behind that system. But it won't be for everyone. Some people will maybe rage quit when their node is destroyed, but I just hope that that's not too many people, that it doesn't impact the game too much, losing players like that. Now, another thing then that was discussed, the node will visually expand as the node expands. So scaffolding will start showing up and new plots will be cleared on the outskirts of the node as you start to expand, which is awesome. There's some footage that I'm showing here at the minute that shows the expansion and the building of buildings and how pretty it actually is, and I think the artwork is absolutely amazing so far. The last nugget of information then that was shared is apparently the Riverlands biome is bigger than some MMOs. Now, the Riverlands biome is the one that we have had all of our live streams in and we've seen a decent bit of, but apparently it's bigger than some of the smaller MMOs. So overall, the map, like the total map, is just one biome, so the total map of Ashes is going to be massive, and I'm super excited for it. On that note, I'd just like to say thank you for watching this video, and if you've liked what you've seen, liked what you've heard, give me a like and a subscribe, and any comments to make, leave them down below. But for now, wherever you are, thank you for watching, and goodbye and good luck.